should get tougher on people who buy guns with the express purpose of turning around and selling them to criminals. And we should severely punish anybody who helps them do this.
The ATF recently armed the Sinaloa cartel for war, according to a U.S. Senate report, with the transfer of more than 2,000 guns in its Operation Fast and Furious. These guns included AR-15s, AK-47s, and several models of .50 caliber armor-piercing sniper weapons with a killing range of more than 1 mile.
Stacey? Well, Bev, this is a story we've been following for a few months. Why an agency that's supposed to help stop weapons trafficking actually made it easier. Today, all of the major players, from members of the Terry family to ATF whistleblowers, came together to testify on Capitol Hill.
This was a catastrophic disaster.
It started in Valley gun stores. Handguns and assault rifles sold to straw buyers.
We monitored as they purchased handguns, AK-47 variants and .50 caliber rifles. We took notes. We recorded observations. We tracked movements of these individuals. We wrote reports, but nothing more.
The ATF suspected the guns were bound for dangerous drug trafficking organizations, and agents say they were instructed to let them go.
I was to do as I was told.
The theory behind the so-called Fast and Furious operation, that letting the guns walk would lead the ATF to the architects of the cartels. But that never happened.
The next time we became aware of these guns would be when they were recovered at their final crime.
2 walked guns wound up at a particularly noteworthy crime scene in Rio Rico, Arizona, where 40-year-old U.S. border agent Brian Terry was killed in a shootout with armed bandits.
I just was flabbergasted. I didn't believe it at first.
It happened days before Christmas.
Brian did ultimately come home that Christmas. We buried him not far from the house that he was raised in just prior to Christmas Day.
Who authorized it at the highest level?
Again, Mr. Chairman, please, if you...
Do you know who authorized it at the highest level?
Yeah, and that is the question tonight. Who authorized the operation that may have gotten Agent Brian Terry killed?
Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano says the U.S. will send more agents and equipment to the border with Mexico to deal with drug-related violence. This half-hour briefing began with White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs.
I want to discuss an issue that's very important to the President this morning, the steps we're taking on both sides of the border, working with our Mexican partners to support the Mexican government's campaign against the violent cartels and to reduce contraband in both directions across the border. DHS, DOJ, and Treasury are all ramping up personnel efforts directed at the southwest border. State Clinton goes to Mexico tomorrow, and Secretary Napolitano and Attorney General Eric Holder visit April 1st and 2nd, all ahead of the President's visit on the way to the Summit of the Americas, April 16th and 17th. Because this effort has so many facets, the U.S.-Mexico relationship and our efforts to help address the increase in violence in Mexico are being coordinated with the White House through the National Security Council and the Homeland Security Council. Today, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, Deputy Secretary of State Jim Steinberg, and U.S. Deputy Attorney General David Ogden will lay out the administration's comprehensive response to the situation along the border with Mexico, and we'll take a few questions.
Good morning. There are a number of issues involved, a number of actions being undertaken by DHS in conjunction with the Department of State, the Department of Justice with respect to Mexico. And I'm just going to go through a whole inventory of actions that are underway. Some we have already undertaken in the last several weeks. Others are being taken either today or in the immediate future.
Under the President's leadership and together with the State Department and DHS, the Department of Justice stands ready to take the fight to the Mexican drug cartels. Attorney General Holder and I are committed to taking advantage of all department resources and those of associated agencies to target the Mexican cartels. We will investigate and prosecute the criminals who smuggle drugs into the United States and distribute and sell them in our cities and towns. We will also investigate and prosecute those who smuggle guns, bulk cash, and contraband from the United States to Mexico. The President has directed us to take action to fight these cartels, and Attorney General Holder and I are taking several new and aggressive steps as part of the administration's comprehensive plan. DOJ's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is increasing its efforts by adding 37 new employees in 3 new offices using $10 million in Recovery Act funds, and redeploying 100 personnel to the southwest border in the next 45 days to fortify its Project Gunrunner, which is aimed at disrupting arms trafficking between the United States and Mexico. ATF is doubling its presence in Mexico itself, from 5 to 9 personnel working with the Mexicans specifically to facilitate gun tracing activity which targets the illegal weapons and their sources in the United States. DOJ's Office of Justice Programs is investing $30 million in stimulus funding to help state and local government and law enforcement combat narcotics activity along the southwest border and in high-intensity drug trafficking areas. Additionally, the state and local law enforcement in those areas can apply for COPS and burn justice assistance grants, a total of $3 billion of which were provided in the stimulus package.
Let's take a couple questions here.
How can you expect to have a real impact on this issue?
Several things. One is, first of all, you've got to interdict the arms. You've got to stop them from going into Mexico. That's why we're increasing the southbound inspections. That's why we're moving the technology to the border to help with screening going into the border. We're coordinating with Mexico because they can do more by way of southbound screening on their side of the border. But then the Department of Justice moving their agents down there, as David said, and increasing tracing. That will help us identify who is putting those arms into the arms, those guns into the arms of the traffickers moving south. The Department of Justice moving their agents down there, as David said, and increasing tracing.
The President has directed us to take action to fight these cartels, and Attorney General Holder and I are taking several new and aggressive steps as part of the administration's comprehensive plan. Gun tracing.
But then the Department of Justice moving their agents down there, as David said, and increasing tracing.
Is Lourdes here from Univision?
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, your administration presented a plan to help curb the violence in Mexico and also to control any or prevent any spillover of the violence into the United States.
Well, first of all, let's focus on what we did today. It's very significant. We are sending millions of dollars in additional equipment to provide more effective surveillance. We are providing hundreds of additional personnel that can help control the border, deal with customs issues. We are coordinating very effectively with the Mexican government and President Calderon, who has taken on an extraordinarily difficult task of dealing with these drug cartels that have gotten completely out of hand. We've got to also take some steps, even as he is doing more to deal with the drug cartels sending drugs into the United States. We need to do more to make sure that illegal guns and cash aren't flowing back to these cartels. That's part of what's financing their operations. That's part of what's arming them. That's what makes them so dangerous. And this is something that we take very seriously, and we're going to continue to work on diligently in the months to come.
The Spanish-language network Univision has tied weapons from the ATF's gun operation to a massacre at a birthday party back in January of 2010. Well, in that shooting, a group of hitmen opened fire on dozens of high school students, killing 14 and wounding 24 more. Serial numbers from guns at the scene and another mass shooting back in 2009 match the guns on the list of weapons turned over to Congress. The report identifies nearly 60 previously unreported weapons found at kidnapping and murder scenes, also linked to Fast and Furious. Of course, 2 of the weapons found at Arizona border agent Brian Terry's murder scene were also traced back to Fast and Furious.
You have to understand the way in which the department operates. Although There are operations. This one has gotten a great deal of publicity.
Yeah, there are dead Americans as a result of this failed and reckless program. So I would say that it hasn't gotten enough attention, has it, Mr. Attorney General?
It's not necessary.
When did you first know about the program, officially I believe called Fast and Furious? To the best of your knowledge, what date?
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
And Fast and Furious, I think I've been very clear that I have complete confidence in Attorney General Holder in how he handles his office. He has been very aggressive in going after gun running and cash transactions that are going to these transnational drug cartels in Mexico. There's been a lot of cooperation between the United States and Mexico on this front.
Of the more than 2,000 firearms sent to Mexico, less than 600 have been recovered, the majority at Mexican crime scenes. It's believed more than 1,400 weapons are still on Mexican streets.
Of course, we consider this was a violation of international law, and those asked in Mexico said they had no knowledge of what was happening. No one said there was agreement to carry out an operation like this.
You testified that in December you became aware of Fast and Furious.
I said after the death of Agent Terry, yes.
Okay. You became aware of this in December. The IVG investigation began in February. For 3 months, you had a dead Border Patrol agent, and there was no IG investigation. What did you do between December and February to find out about Fast and Furious? You haven't talked to Eric Holder about this.
That is correct.
And he testified here that he only knew about it a few weeks before the interview he had in May here before this committee, and that he basically heard about it in the newspaper.
His death was so tragic and so needless.
When attorney Pat McGroder agreed to represent Kent and Josephine Terry following the death of their 40-year-old son Brian, he never dreamed the case would escalate from wrongful death to speculated government cover-up.
It certainly has burgeoned into a series of fronts, political included, that I would never have imagined.
The White House asserted its executive privilege, also refusing to comply.
Executive order from the president banning the release of key documents many suspect outline what happened that December night, as well as who knew what when.
The U.S. House of Representatives voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in criminal contempt of Congress.
The Terrys taken aback watching everything unfold.
Oh, I think their disgust is born out of 18 months of frustration to what they see as an inability for people to be transparent. Is there something hard about a governmental official coming forward and indicating exactly what happened, taking responsibility for what happened, good and bad, and reaching out to the Terry family? I mean, those are three very simple things that, for whatever reason, have not and are not occurring.
In the coming hours and days, my administration will keep the American people fully informed.
Nobody will ever let you know. When you ask the reasons why, they just tell you that you're on your own. Fill your head all full of lies.
Brian Terry's mother is back home in Michigan today, waiting for closure.
I feel like I still haven't had that big cry that I need to have. Once I know all this is done, I think that'll happen.